In France, there's a noticeable rise in speeches, laws, and hate crimes that target and stigmatize Muslim communities. Far-right ideas are spreading rapidly across most of Europe, partly due to Israel's war on Gaza. The hate for Muslims is no longer hidden, it's becoming common. Islamophobia in France can be understood in large part as a reflection of its colonial past. Contemporary issues like secularism, immigration, and national identity play major roles, but the legacy of French colonialism, especially in North Africa, laid the foundation for many of the current tensions. So, is the Islamophobia we are seeing now a continuation of that past? I'm Nasra Marbuana, and you're listening to Aloud from TRT Global Podcasts. This show brings you TRT Global articles made for audio. In this episode, we have adapted the article titled Islamophobia in France, Colonial Roots and Contemporary Continuities by Samer Hama, first published on March 14, 2025. France colonized large parts of North and West Africa, notably Algeria, Morocco, Tunisia, and parts of the Sahel. Many of these colonies had predominantly Muslim populations, but Islam was often portrayed as backward or incompatible with French civilization. Many observers draw direct lines between today's Islamophobia and France's colonial past, particularly in the colonization of Algeria. Historian and anti-racist activist Youssouf Boussouma puts it bluntly.
Et puis surtout, les musulmans de France, dans leur imaginaire.
He says, and I quote, "Colonization wasn't just about occupying land. It was more about cultural and religious domination. Islam was seen as a barrier to France's so-called civilizing mission." End quote. The policies back then were brutal. During colonization, France imposed a racial and cultural hierarchy. Muslims in colonies were often denied full citizenship rights until they gave up aspects of their religion. For example, the Code of Indigenous Rights from 1881 stripped Muslim Algerians of political rights, it restricted their movement, and basically criminalized their religious practices. Then, in 1905, France passed the law of separation of church and state. It's a foundational law that established laïcité, or secularism, as a core principle of the Republic. Mosques were monitored, colonial authorities picked imams, and Islamic teachings were pushed to the margins, all under the guise of secularism. That same secularism law is still hailed as a cornerstone of French Republican values. But today, it's often used in debates over Muslim visibility in public life, such as banning the hijab in schools or face coverings in public. Critics, such as Rima Hassan, a member of the European Parliament, argue that laïcité is often applied unequally, targeting Muslim practices more than others.
Il ne faut pas oublier que la manière le processus colonial français en Algérie, ça a
She
été,
says France's colonization of Algeria was deeply Islamophobic. It involved banning the Quran, destroying mosques, and forcing women to remove their veils. She argues that modern-day policies like the 2021 anti-separatism law are simply the latest version of the same old story. That law also passed under the banner of secularism, places tighter controls on religious organizations, private schools, and Muslim funding. More recently, a bill was introduced to ban the wearing of the veil in sports competitions. Again, it was justified in the name of secularism. But critics say that secularism is being twisted into a tool of exclusion. Hassan says she's not just talking about isolated acts of racism. She says this is institutionalized Islamophobia. The state itself is targeting Muslims, their clothes, their schools, even the right to play sports. The rhetoric hasn't changed much either. Under colonization, Muslims were painted as backward and dangerous. Today, the same narratives play out, only with different vocabulary. Islam is linked to terrorism, and the veil is framed as a symbol of oppression. According to Boussouma, it's the same logic, just updated for the 21st century.
L'islamophobie est un des moteurs de cette fascisation.
He says France demands assimilation from its Muslim population while continuing to deny them full citizenship. And this results in Islamophobic acts being on the rise. One recent incident that stands out is the brutal stabbing to death of a young Malian man named Abubakar Sisi in a mosque in the south of the country. On April 25, 2025, an attacker stabbed Sisi dozens of times and filmed him with a mobile phone while shouting anti-Muslim insults. He then shamelessly posted the footage on the social media platform Snapchat before fleeing the country. The suspect, referred to by the media as Olivier A., is a French national who was born in 2004. He'd spent 3 days on the run before turning himself into the police. He was transferred from Italy to a courthouse in the southern French city of Nîmes, according to media reports. He faces a possible indictment for murder aggravated by premeditation and the circumstance of commission because of race and religion. Sisi's murder sparked outrage in France. At first, government officials refused to treat the killing as a hate crime. They portrayed the murder as an isolated act of hatred and derangement, rather than a reflection of a larger issue. A few months prior, on February 27th, a suspected arson attack hit the prayer room of the Franco-Turkish Association in Jajur. That one barely made headlines, but none of these are isolated events. They're reflecting a broader climate of hostility brewing in France. The violence may look different compared to that during the Algerian War or the massacres in Sétif and Paris in the 50s and 60s. But the discrimination is still deeply rooted. So what now? Rima Hassan believes real change will only come when France confronts its colonial past.
C'est plutôt un racisme qui est encouragé, voire qui est institutionnalisé.
Islamophobia doesn't just appear out of nowhere, she reminds us. It's built on historical foundations that we haven't dealt with. Without that reckoning and memorial justice, equality remains out of reach. Just recently, French political journalist Jean-Michel Apathy was suspended by TV channel RTL for reminding listeners about the violence committed in Algeria during colonization. The backlash he faced says a lot about France. It seems like it's still struggling to face the truths of its own history. That's all for this episode. Thank you for listening, and until next time, stay informed. This Aloud episode was an adaptation of an article on TRT Francais.